December 16th, 1944. In the early morning chill near Monschau, Germany, the frozen earth trembled under the thunder of American artillery. But something was different. The shells weren't hitting the ground. They were exploding midair, showering the advancing German troops with lethal steel from above. No foxhole, no tree cover, no defensive position could shield them. It was a new kind of death, precise, inescapable, and terrifyingly effective. Among the seasoned veterans of the 326th Volksgrenadier Division, men who had survived the brutal Eastern Front, confusion and panic took hold. This wasn't the artillery they knew. Gone were the safe zones, the predictable impacts. In their place was a new, invisible calculus of destruction. The reason? An American colonel named Oscar Alfred Axelson had made a historic and unauthorized decision that would change the Battle of the Bulge and warfare itself. Against direct orders, Colonel Axelson ordered his artillery crews to load their guns with a top-secret weapon: proximity fuses, miniature radar systems embedded within shells. These devices could detect their distance from the ground or a target and detonate at the optimal height for maximum carnage. With this single act, Axelson unleashed a technological force that multiplied the lethality of artillery by a factor of 50. This wasn't just another military innovation. This was a scientific marvel born from the collaboration of America's brightest minds and industrial giants, developed in utmost secrecy, at times matching even the Manhattan Project security levels. The proximity fuse was a triumph of physics, miniaturization, and engineering. Each fuse, no larger than a coffee can, contained over 130 components, including vacuum tubes that could survive the unimaginable forces of being fired from a cannon. Factories like RCA, General Electric, and Sylvania transformed into weapons labs. Workers, many of them women, operated in total secrecy, building fuses they didn't understand but knew were critical. By December 1944, America was producing 40,000 proximity fuses a day. The cost per unit dropped from $700 to just $18. The scale and precision of the effort were staggering. The Battle of the Bulge had begun with Hitler's desperate gamble: 200,000 men, 1,000 tanks, and 2,000 artillery pieces launched a surprise attack across the fog-shrouded Ardennes. The Allies were caught off guard. Many frontline units were tired, under-equipped, or new to combat. But Colonel Axelson's rogue decision at Monschau proved to be a turning point. The German advance was stalled by an invisible wall of shrapnel falling from the sky. When word of the weapon's effectiveness reached Allied high command, Eisenhower moved quickly. On December 21st, all restrictions were lifted. Proximity fuses were now authorized for general battlefield use. Within days, these advanced shells were distributed across the front. The results were devastating and decisive. In Bastogne, the 101st Airborne, surrounded and under siege, held off German assaults with the help of proximity fuse artillery. The 969th Artillery Battalion, an African-American unit, used 155mm shells to create a ring of death around the town. Even elite SS units found their training meaningless in the face of invisible shrapnel that rained from above. The very forest the Germans had relied on for cover turned against them. Tree bursts from proximity fuses created deadly splinters that shredded men even in their foxholes. A single shell could clear a tennis court, sized area of all life. One of the most horrifying displays came at the Sauer River. A German battalion tried to cross under cover of fog and night. Patton's artillery, using proximity fuses, caught them mid-crossing. When the smoke cleared, 702 bodies lay scattered on the ice, a documented slaughter that stunned even seasoned commanders. And still, the Germans had no answer. They had captured some 20,000 proximity fuse shells, but their scientists couldn't believe what they saw. They thought the technology was impossible, a decoy, A trick. Ironically, Germany had once led this field but had canceled development in 1940. By the time they understood the threat, it was too late. On Christmas Day, German units attempting to rest and regroup were bombarded. No observers were needed. The shells detonated overhead with terrifying accuracy. Weather and darkness no longer provided sanctuary. Every inch of the battlefield could now be reached by death from above. The weapon proved devastating in the skies as well. On January 1st, 1945, during Operation Bodenplatte, German fighters launched a massive attack on Allied airfields. They achieved initial success, but returning planes ran into proximity-fused anti-aircraft fire. Of the 277 aircraft lost, 172 were taken down by these shells. The Luftwaffe never recovered. By mid-January, secrecy was impossible. The War Department allowed the New York Times to report on a new type of fuse that made American guns vastly more deadly. German intelligence reports finally admitted what soldiers had known for weeks. No effective countermeasures exist. The numbers tell the story. 200,000 proximity fuse shells were fired in the Ardennes, accounting for 15,000 to 20,000 German casualties, up to 20% of total losses in the battle. Proximity fuses increased artillery effectiveness by 5 to 10 times and required no forward observers. In Patton's words, "The funny fuse won the battle of the Bulge for us." The human cost was immense. German soldiers, many barely out of their teens, faced a weapon they couldn't understand, couldn't escape. Meanwhile, American workers, laboring in secret under enormous pressure, suffered exhaustion, accidents, and the burden of building death machines without even knowing it. And yet, the grim truth remained. Every day the war was shortened likely saved thousands in the Holocaust. Every minute shaved off the timeline spared Allied lives. The proximity fuse helped end the war faster and more decisively. But its impact didn't end in 1945. The innovations at birth, from miniaturized electronics to guided munitions, laid the foundation for the smart weapons of today. Every precision-guided missile, every modern radar system, traces its lineage back to these small, deadly devices packed with tiny vacuum tubes. The Battle of the Bulge marked the last great German offensive of the war. It failed, and among the many reasons, bravery, logistics, air power, stood one unsung hero, the proximity fuse. It was a moment when science, industry, and military necessity converged, a moment when war itself changed. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes, a new kind of warfare was born, one driven not just by manpower, but by minds, a war of intelligence sensors and smart weapons, a war in which mathematics, radar, and microengineering rewrote the rules of death, and in doing so, they changed history.